Al.
Okay. Well, hello.
Traveling Mollies. Welcome all. Hey, Al.
Hello, Nina. Welcome back from your long vacation. It's good to see you.
Working vacation, but yes, it's good. It's almost good to be back. All things considered, Mexico is warmer. But we're all over the world tonight. We have one of our features, Chun Yu, is here from China, and Michael Warr, also co-feature, is here from San Francisco, and we're pretty much ready to roll.
Okay, so welcome everyone, and I can't really tell if the video is moving, but I'm Nina and I usually start things off with a poem, so none of our open micers have to go first. And so Nina, do you want to go first, or would you like me to?
Why don't you, if you don't mind? I promise I'll go first next time.
Okay. I'm going to do a newer poem. So this is the first time I'm reading it anywhere. It's the title. Well, the poem begins with an epigraph from Anne Waldman from her poem Revolution, and the epigraph is, "And you realize you're still as alive as ever and want to be." And the name of the poem is Where I'm At. Sitting alone, unmasked, with a bottle of water, waiting for my lamb shawarma, content in the gray of this day, of the almost quiet. Dexter Gordon's sack searching through body and soul somewhere in the concerns of the cobweb ceiling. Or is it? Suddenly I see as clear as the knife and fork on the small table, the closet door frame where we marked our boys' heights on each birthday. We left it behind for the future to paint over. I know these are details necessary to the telling, marking time, pencil mark by pencil mark, so many birthdays, and the hot lentil soup I sip, the honey dessert to come, then the cold walk through puddles back to my car. A scowling man in a fedora passes the window. I want to be somewhere else, perhaps Rome, a different vantage point. Would it all look the same? The details, just as anyone would have expected. Here I am.
Nice.
Thank you. Thank you.
So Al, Where I'm At is the name of the anthology, isn't it?
Yes, it's a new anthology that's After Hours Press, which most of you know, I've been publishing After Hours magazine for a long time. And we've done a couple books, and now we've partnered with the Chicago Literary Hall of Fame and Third World Press, and we're doing a new anthology of Chicago poetry called Wherever I'm At. And I'll put up a link later, and the book isn't printed yet, so I can't show you it. We're in the last stages of proofing, but very soon the book will, it's available to pre-order actually, so I can put the link up for pre-orders. But the real book launch is June 13th, but we'll probably have a preview of it on May 15th with the American Writers Museum's conference. And yeah, so it's exciting. We've got a lot of important people in the book. Michael is in the book, and Nina is in the book. Eduardo is in the book, but we also have Sandra Cisneros and Tahimba Jess and Lee Young Lee, a lot of people who've called Chicago home. So it's going to be exciting when it's done. So,
yeah, and
thanks for allowing me to plug that. So
yeah, well.
And Nina was actually, I mean, the story about the book is Nina was actually one of the original people to get it launched long ago with Robin Metz. And then Robin Metz passed away and the project kind of fell by the wayside. But Don Evans had made a promise to Robin that he would try to bring it to fruition. So that's what's happening.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I will read a poem. It's called Against Straight Lines. has a couple of parts. Number one, dial up the dialectic and you get three answers. Who roughhouse on a subway platform, who haggle around on the third rail, part quarrel, part play. You can almost plot the dots by then, every one with an asterisk in its pocket, every fingernail painted on its digit, gift of scatter, gift of gist. It's a real page turner. 2, idea as original cradle, image as second language, factory second string, projections, breakdancing on a cave wall, bench warmers waiting for their metaphor, waiting to be called up. 3, as for straight lines, can't draw them, sew them, or walk them, never could. 4, the acolyte clings to the concrete with all the white her knuckles can muster, hugs it till it skins her like sandpaper, leaving her sullen and grumpy. But if I let go, who will catch me? And the guru says, all those who have fallen before, they're sending invitations, yours in torn sarong, yours in laundromat and carousel. Cut the sandbags from your body balloon. Helium is elemental. Give it helm. But will they understand? The novice whimpers. Whereupon the wise one shrugs, how do you know what they know even now? And she ponders this until her fingers are morning and the sun is raw. Thank you. Well, for those of you who don't know, one of our features tonight is one of the founders of the Guild Complex, which is still in existence, but really kind of formed the backdrop of the multicultural literary scene and community in Chicago for many years. And as a result, we have some people here tonight who represent for the Guild. And I wonder, but I'm not going to start with Eduardo. Molly, do you want to get us started? Molly Sturdivant.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I am undecided about what to read as of this moment, so we'll just go with it. I recently took 2 long walks, one in the city, one out of the city. I think I'll read my walk poems. I'll start with the walk I took out in some lovely rural woods. It's called Prairie Preserve Walk. Across the fen of the farthest remnant, where a patch of prairie sows stone to river, I walked. Heat spread out on the green depth of yarrow, cinquefoil snared the gold star, and the wild Asclepius thrilled, as if this year was some other. For that hour, cicadas rippled chatter by a constant brook, birds flickered over. One long arc of blue stem leaned, then rose again. There was happiness in it, and the bee, who played above the shadow. And this is the city walk. Girl goes walking. When I'm melting, walking through the city, looking up looks like optimism, cawing crows from somewhere, witchy in a slick canyon of glass, watching one on a street lamp, cawing, I am not done, cussing, painting, stealing, scraping browned bits from pans, breaking up, spread eagle in that lost house, sunk in the woods of Morgan Park, haunting Rock Island by the bridge, enjoying a day with my mind unfucked by phones. There, look, look, would you look? Come, come, think about this. Would you buy it? Click it, click it, click it. I can't look. My eyes are not made for this shit, and I best like to lust after me with a mirror set up in a river, this river, in this world. If I reached out to punch, would any fist block it, or in the alpenglow hours, will dense particulate matter pink the air without sound? Will I stroll solo in my alley strung with hanging knots of 20th century cables? Listen, a girl's diction is fractured, destitute infrastructure, bridges weeping, peeling bolts, streaks of mascara, rust, oxidation. They still hold up cars, right? I invite into my bed one printed 3x5. The bright flash and the first day parked by the Oak Street curve. Here comes that bird spreading feathers. Caw. Plates of ice on the lake was the day I moved here. I moved my body here. I move with bodies. Philippians 4:8. Think of whatever is pleasing. That bartender's hand on the arch of my foot, being in worlds within worlds of a city, within the city, in worlds, like that giant foyer with Nike of Samothrace and passers-by in the atrium of the Lyric, or the dank Pedway tunnel. Are we supposed to be in this store? How did we get here? Is it even open? And are these things really for sale, which we can touch and hold and reject? Coming out of that subway, one is faced with a huge church. Wish someone would go there regularly. Not me. Not I, said the hen. Not I, said the cat. Not if God bears the imperfection of judging actions. Not if God bears nothing but perfection, and is thus no thing. Not if God has a face. Come on, my family didn't know what philosophy was, or if I'd saved enough money, detasseling corn every summer, to become a nurse or a teacher, but the whole world and the feeling of it then less burned. Some days I walk through the city by myself now, birding not. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Molly.
You're welcome.
I love that.
Thanks, Nina.
So before I call up our next reader, I'd like to introduce Walt Whitman here on my chest. He's my traveling companion tonight. Next in the open mic, Charlotte Hart. I haven't heard you in such a long time. Welcome. You're muted. You're muted. I think you're still muted, Charlotte.
There.
There you go.
Okay. Thank you for having me tonight. You unfold the origami of my commitments in time and place and open me. And when open, you love me. And then you fold me back in a state of grace. Desert Flow, Conversations in Art and Poetry is a book of abstract digital art by Adrian Caldera with poetry by me, Charlotte Hart. It will be published in English and Spanish by Cloud Hands Press on April 20th. Caldera's art came to me first on Twitter, then via email from Juarez, Mexico. I returned his art to him in an email with a poem. There was no personal conversation or information. We have never met. Passion. Silky night dreams. Need curls recursive like cream entering coffee. Your touch sparks strange static. Electric lace glistens on my skin. Our breath changes my heart. I suck up the oxygen of your kindness. We know nothing but desire, quivering, force, tactile waves of heat, the campfire of our memories, furious entering into time we have not lived. You unfathomable speed, plummets dizzy with delight. Our singed sighs plunge and hiss and into watery abyss. A massive wave sweeps us into its elemental force as we surf an unknown course. I weep relief, valves open and close, spilling blood into inner chambers. I crack. You hold me together, whispering the language of smoke. We lay tightly entwined, a kiss of unextinguished embers. Can't wall the sky. This sunlight moment takes me with great speed over long distances, very gently, very kindly to the house we have built, a 4-dimensional hypercube home that casts a 3-dimensional shadow. The endless parameters of our lives, tenderness, devotion, the splendor of all, no moment small. In the slow smile of our days in this world of change and commotion, we are secure. 5 senses here. Breath, airy alveoli generosity, expansive and invisible aid to our inhaling life's every moment. Our diaphragm of rise and fall breathes deep. Sustenance of life rushes in, then released. The perfect combination, need and fulfillment. While we are occupied with other things, a pulsing heart erection, inspection of finances, the tree limb that crushed the roof, children of a bloody war, cunning to settle a score, artichokes and butter, cigar smoke, a child's stutter, mild wind over water, a hummingbird, a siren heard, bells ringing, perfume of orange blossoms, pain, fame, fingers in sand, you take my hand, sweet red cherries, fresh almonds, 2 in the same shell, D, C, G, G chords on the guitar, words and worlds, unexpected golden flow, freedom of being, tenderness of life, gift of carefree inhale, radiant motion and release. Without these, there is only loss. Our breath, fragile as myths.
Mm. Lovely, lovely. It's great to hear your work.
Thank you.
After such a long time. So what about Eduardo Orocho? Eduardo Orocho just brought
Yes.
life. It was one of the life forces at the Guild Complex so many years ago. It's still around.
Thank you, Nina. And Bill, you mentioned something about Walt Whitman on your shirts, but
That was Al.
oh, perdón. Oh, yeah, that's right. Al, you know, I just want to thank you for all your work that you're doing on this anthology. And of course, I want to thank Don Evans, who's not here right now, but I'm going to read actually the poem that I submitted.
Okay. Don is actually in the audience on YouTube. So I'd
Cool.
like to welcome all our YouTube viewers right now. Don is out there, and Julie Parson Nesbitt, and
Awesome.
Patty McMillan, and everybody else who's on YouTube should identify themselves. So Eduardo, go on.
Yeah, so I want to really thank him. And actually, I finished this poem on January 6th of 2020. And it was for the 25th anniversary of the Paseo Boricua Gateway flags, which are these, if you're from Chicago, you know, in Humboldt Park, we got these giant steel Puerto Rican flags. And so I finished the poem, but we didn't have our Three Kings celebration that year because it was freezing for some reason. They canceled it. And so I had a poem, and then a few months later, Don sends me a message to contribute a poem, and I send it to him. And this is after I had sent it to several other places, which were rejected, but I'm glad he said yes. So I want to thank you, Don, especially. But this poem, as I mentioned, for the 25th anniversary, and obviously it's 2 years later, but I just want to announce that on Friday, I had whatchamacallit, co-authored the preliminary summary of information to the Commission on Chicago Landmarks to make the Paseo Boricua Gateway flags a landmark, and it was passed on Friday. So it's gonna go on to the full council for a vote. And so I'm very happy about that. But I wanna read the poem now. And it's called Rainbow Shoes. And it's part of a series of poems that I've been writing for all my time. And so I want to read it. But before I do, I want to thank Michael Warr as well. He is one of my inspirations. And he didn't just found the Field Complex, he actually helped so many people, generation of people, poets. He helped them to get started and inspired them to continue and gave us a space, a safe space. So I just had to set that, get that out of the way. Anyways, here goes the poem. I am the tour guide. I am the docent. I walk with rainbow shoes, Converse, thick laces. I haven't gone anywhere. I haven't left. I survived La Division Street. Paseo Boricua is next. Chicago. Our story defies your attempts to gentrify. These steel banderas are residentes permanentes. I walked here when we were within shooting distance from each other. I walk here now and we are within loving distance from each other. I remember before I had rainbow shoes, on this corner, the blue shoe gang, on that corner, the green shoe gang, on the next corner, the brown shoe gang, 3 blocks away, the red shoe gang, 6 blocks away, the yellow shoe gang. So many obstacles, colonial divisions. The wrong shoe might get you jumped or chased just to get to school a few blocks away, so I prayed for rainbow shoes. They came to me, a gift from the 3, un tesoro de los santos. No son Jordans, but I can jump triunfando. I'm not afraid anymore. We made it difficult to be erased. Murals in every corner, our story is safe. I walk in freedom now. Yo ando feliz. Steel banderas above me and rainbow shoes on my feet. Thank you for the time. Thank you, Nina and Bill.
And now.
Oh, yes, indeed.
Oh, nice. Thank you for reading that, Eduardo. So next on our open mic list, who should it be? Let's have Jackie. How about you?
Set my timer here. Thanks, Nina. Thanks, Al. Thanks, Bill. Just a quick plug. If anybody's in Chicago this weekend, Saturday, April 16th at 10 p.m., I will be performing as part of Beast Women, as part of the Rhino Festival at Pride Art Center at Irving and Broadway. So if anybody's not doing anything, not just for me, but do it for all the beasts, because it's a pretty fabulous show. In the spirit of spring, I'm going to read 2 springtime poems here. This one is called 2 Legs Good, 4 Legs Bad Too. I don't usually write rhyming poetry, but this one begged to be done. fat bastard descending from a tree as I eat my falafel. It swaggers up to me. Toilet brush bristle shaped tail up in the air. I holler at it, boo, trying to give it a scare. I lunge in its direction, but it does not even flinch. In fact, it scrabbles up to me, closer inch by inch. People stop and stare at me as though I was insane, not unlike the local bookstore kook giving out flyers in the rain. Go away, I hiss at it. I don't want to have to beg. It merely stares up at me and sits on its back legs, with its furry gut slopping over into its lap. It's not going anywhere. It doesn't give a crap. This is my sandwich, I remind it as it pumps the air with its paw. Humans get to eat first. I explain to it the law. Undaunted, it scurries up to me as quickly as a thing with a 3-mile-an-hour land speed can bring. Don't even think about it, I snarl, knowing the effort is futile. The critter doesn't deviate. It's in it for a while. And then just as the squirrel puts a chubby claw on my shoe, I throw my lunch at it and shout, ah, nuts to you. And this one is called The Visit. It's to my peonies. Every year that you show up, it's like one of the most divine of the cool kids coming to hang out with me. The neighbors admire and envy us, and I feel so special that you want to visit me and only me, even with the underlying dread of knowing you will be here so briefly. It has gotten to where I can tell the exact day that you'll arrive and the precise point at which you will be your most glorious and compelling. I don't just look forward to it. I anticipate the anticipation of your waxing in the days leading up to it, when I just want to gather you up in my arms and take your luminescence inside. You look and smell creamy like soap. Then I could pose, take selfies with you in the background like a name drop. Hey, look at how worthy I am. I even grow giddy with the thought of you getting ready to go. It's so subtle that the first time it happened, you were gone practically overnight. I woke to find you gone and gasped. Now I'm aware of the signs, your head turning away and down, the slow detachment, the wilting crown. All my neighbors know it too as they pipe up about how beautiful and lucky it was to be around you. The smell of you still adrift in the air. I rest my head on the screen door and stare outside at your ghosts in my garden, thinking, was it worth it this time? Is it worth it any time? I remember how bleak my other choice would be before going about my business for another year. Thank you.
Well, it's good to see you. I think the last time I saw you was at, or at least live saw you, was at a reading up in Wicker Park somewhere in a bookstore.
Yes.
Once in a great while. So next I'm gonna invite, is it G?
Thank you, Nina. Perfect.
Yes. What was I gonna ask you? So are you here in the States?
Yes, I am. I'm outside of Los Angeles.
Okay, where it's very green. At least
Corwin
fine.
has been here for quite a few months.
Don't remind me. Not
So
here.
thank you, Nina and Al for hosting. I do feel very special about connecting with poets in Chicago. I spent some time, went to school in Urbana-Champaign, and Chicago was just the city to go to. And I also want to thank my friend Train for inviting me. And it's such a delight to be reunited with Train and Michael. We had wonderful conversations in San Francisco, so thank you all. I'm I'm going to read a couple poems in which I recall the violent times that I witnessed in my childhood in the 1960s China. This spring, I know for so many of us, the war in Ukraine is very much on our mind. So I would like to dedicate these poems to the children who suffer from war, trauma, displacement, and who are in migration and transition towards peace and healing. Here's my first poem. I investigate body and pain. I investigate body and pain, body's immeasurable forbearance, pain's impossible jubilance, and the dance of the nerves. The sea of red flags rocks revolutionary slogans. Black plaques hung on counter-revolutionaries' necks. Air catches fire, body bears ash. Who can erase the white chalk marks scribing crime? Who can chip away the coarse calligraphy hinging death to the body? Body infamously in trance, pain livid in autumn's flame. The second poem that I'm going to be reading is titled Psalm Concerning an Ex-Revolutionary Girl. Let her body live even with such torment. Let her drive safely to San Francisco to learn what she needs to learn. Let the waves of trucks swim by like quick fish. Let the gulls circle the air, the wind play with the clouds, the ocean waves soothe her eyes. Let the suicidal notes humming in her head quiet down and ghosts of her childhood vanish. Let the reeds sing. Let her smell fresh ginger and her mother's steamed wheat bread. Let her run in the rain with ecstasy and always love her first abacus. Let her slowly forget the bullets of the revolution, her red spear, bloody love, the enemy invented in slogans whom she'd never met. Let the superstition of her birth that caused the onset of the longest drought drown out. Let the girl survive in the maze of the living, sometimes more dangerous to navigate than the world of the dead. Let her turn at the right crossing and let her body not burn in a funereal rite. Let the dark soot of memory dissolve into generous cells. Let her be near death and live. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for joining. Before we go to our last open micer tonight, I just want to say hello again to everybody on YouTube. We have a bit of a guild reunion. I'll just mention a few of the names that I'm probably going to pronounce this wrong. Excuse me. Bimpe Abegunde, Don Evans, Julie Parson Nesbitt, Patricia McMillan, Tim Brown, Larry Melman, RG Zimmer. We have all kinds of people out listening tonight. John Rowe, who's actually first time here. So it's great to have you all here. And I just posted a link. We like to pass a virtual hat for our features. So I posted a link for all our viewers to do that. I put that in the chat. So now, before we get to our features, and I'd like to thank our open micers and end with a longtime regular to the Molly's reading and a good friend, Kurt Heinz.
Wow, I get to bat cleanup for once. My goodness. That never happens for me, but it's a privilege. And by the way, it's a privilege. Eduardo, thank you for bringing back the flavor of the neighborhood. I lived on Levitt Street myself for quite a few years, so I know what you're talking about. And it was lovely to see the banderas go up over the avenue. Goodness, G, I'm going to be continuing a little bit on your war theme in a second. And then to sort of foreshadow our feature, Michael, thank you for creating the Guild as you did, because you created a place where so many of us who saw poetry firsthand in Chicago got introduced to it as a live thing, more as an entertainment sometimes than as an art. You brought the art in. You created space for that, and as a result, the culture around that literature got a chance to bloom like it did in few other places in the city of Chicago. So, Michael, thank you for doing that and putting so much good spin on so many people's lives. Back to what I'm supposed to do, and that's read a poem. Speaking of people I met at the Guild, Tyamba Jess did a piece which was fascinating to me. You don't see any books behind me right now because my library's been moved out of this room. I couldn't research it. But I remember him doing a poem once that had a left half and a right half. And you could read the left half as one poem and the right half as one poem, and then read across the lines from left to the right, and it would be a continuous thing. I'm going to hold this up so maybe you can see what I'm talking about in front of the camera. I don't know if that makes sense. Maybe you can. And then Ben Clark did something very much like it. And I was like, oh, that is cool. The first time that was cool. The second time, that's really cool. And now I'm going to try it myself at the inspiration of those two fine writers. This is not to compare myself with Ben Clark or Tyamba Jess, but to say that they've inspired some fun experiments here, and I'm very grateful to them for doing that. This piece is called News Cycle. You'll hear it twice, but in three pieces. First one column, then the other column, then both columns concatenated and meshed. News Cycle. On a sunny spring afternoon, bombs don't yet fall around us. We're told we embody a fraternity, but in reality, the others would own us. We open our minds only to see citizen journalists, populists, information, gas. Truth remains shrill and strewn through it all, the way chemicals descend, like something known far too well as it touches flesh. It's a wish from the raining. Other column. We are mesmerized by circling helicopters. They're a novelty. We know our good fate was a surprise to others who envy us and then sent these aircraft. Smokes rise from the buildings on the horizon, a homogeneity of permeating effects. Yet wisdom never repeats to clarify itself, the opposite of a sweet stench. The body becomes internal combustion, perhaps a wish for oligarchs. And now together. On a sunny spring afternoon, we are mesmerized by circling helicopters. Bombs don't yet fall around us. They are a novelty. We're told we embody a fraternity. We know our good fate was a surprise to others, but in reality, the others would own us, who envy us and sent us these aircraft. We open our minds only to see smokes rise from the buildings on the horizon. Citizen journalists, populists, information, gas, a homogeneity of permeating effects. Truth remains shrill and strewn through it all, yet wisdom never repeats to clarify itself. The opposite of the way chemicals descend, like a sweet stench. Something known far too well as it touches flesh, the body becomes internal combustion. It's a wish from, perhaps a wish for, the reigning oligarchs. There we are. News cycle. Thanks again, guys. Thank you, Nina. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Kurt.
Yeah, so nice to see you in the poet chair. And I hope you'll be back with us more. Who knows if and when we'll ever be live. We're having so much fun being able to have people from San Francisco and China, et cetera, by being virtual. So, and I wish I could see you all of you who are attending via YouTube, because many are friends, and I'm glad you're here. Next month, the one person who I have confirmed is Oliver de la Paz, who is someone you will want to hear. And I'm still waiting to hear back from this one other person. But hopefully we will see you next month or in months going forward. In fact, if you have not liked us on Facebook, please do, because then you'll find out about what's coming up. And if you want to be part of the open mic, we encourage you to reach out to us 1 to 2 weeks ahead. Oh, now look at that. Al. Yes, and let me just mention that, and this is a friend to all Guild complexers, Tony Fitzpatrick is the artist whose work is on the cover of the...
I'm trying to show it, but I don't know if this is going to be coming out reversed on the screen or not, but that's the cover of the anthology with Tony Fitzpatrick's artwork. I've posted a link to go to the Chicago Literary Hall of Fame if you want to find out more about it, or you can go to the After Hours Press Facebook page. Lots of ways to find info about that new book, and a link to pre-order. Pre-ordering will certainly make sure you get one of the first copies. So we've had a number of contributors reading tonight, including one of our features, Michael. Anyway, if you're interested, check out one of those links. And back to Nina.
Yeah, well, so we're going to do things a little bit differently tonight because our features are collaborators. And so I'll introduce them both before they get started. And what was I going to say? For those who have not been with us much, we've been doing Q&As after the readings, and usually it's more like me interviewing the two features. However, we have a little extra time, and if people here in Zoom or out in YouTube have a question, you want it read and thrown out to them, we will do that. But right now, I'm going to introduce first Michael Warr, who you've now heard a bit about already. Michael's books include Of Poetry and Protest, from Emmett Till to Trayvon Martin, The Armageddon of Funk, and We Are All the Black Boy. His literary honors include a 2021 San Francisco Artist Grant, 2020 Berkeley Poetry Festival Lifetime Achievement Award, San Francisco Library Laureate, NEA Fellowships, this is not going to stop. There are so many awards here. Black Caucus of the ALA, Gwendolyn Brooks Significant Illinois Poets Award. Anyway, so skipping a few, his poetry is translated into Chinese by poet Chun Yu, who is the other feature, for their Two Languages, One Community project. Michael is a former deputy director of the Museum of the African Diaspora. His bio doesn't mention the Guild complex, maybe because it doesn't need to be mentioned, because it's in all of our hearts. Chun Yu, PhD, is coming to us from China, though she does live in the San Francisco area. She's an award-winning bilingual English and Chinese poet, graphic novelist, scientist, and translator. She's the author of a memoir in verse called Little Green, Growing Up During the Chinese Cultural Revolution on Simon & Schuster, and a historical graphic novel in progress on Macmillan. Her poetry and translations have been nominated for a Pushcart. She's an honoree of the YBCA 100 Award in 2020 for Creative Changemakers. She's won support from the San Francisco Artists Commission, Zellerbach Poets and Writers, and the Sankofa Fund. Her work is taught in world history and culture classes. So we've got all kinds of multidisciplinary, multicultural, multi-media stuff happening tonight and being brought to us from Chun Yu and Michael Warr. So without further ado, go for it.
Hello, everyone. It's good to see you here. And Chun and I have been wanting to do something in Chicago for a while, and we hope that we do more. And thank you for the wonderful introduction, Nina. And I didn't mention the Guild because I only had so many words that I could include, but it's great that so many people here know that association. Chun, is there anything you want to say before we get started?
Oh, I just want to thank Nina and Al for inviting us to this event, and also thank all of the open mic poets for their beautiful poetry. Yeah, and so that's it. I'm so glad, and now we know each other. I know Michael is one of your people. I'm very happy to be part of the community, and I hope to come to Chicago to visit one day. I've never been there. Heard so much about it.
And I also really enjoyed the open mic. Every time I come to this program, the open mic is just so high quality. It's wonderful to see that. So I'm just going to speak briefly. Chun and I will go back and forth a little on this. But Two Languages, One Community is something that we have been working on since 2014, 2014-15. It started as just this kind of individual desire for personally, I always wanted my poetry translated into Chinese. And Chun was at an event I was reading at Ford Mason in San Francisco, where she was also part of the same series, but we weren't reading together that night. So we introduced each other. And I told her that I always wanted my poetry translated into Chinese. And the next day we started meeting over our poetry. And she writes in both English and Chinese. And I was doing some reading of her work, and she was translating my work. And I've been translating into at least 7 different languages. And I knew the type of relationships that come out of the connection that comes out of working with the translator, or the poet and translator working together. And we at some point decided, hey, we need to bring this type of connection as a way to bring communities together, specifically the African American and the Chinese speaking community. So, Chun?
Yeah, that's thank you for introducing our program. Yeah, it's really really wonderful to have this kind of spontaneous things happen, then they grow into a big program like that we have today. And I actually came. I was visiting China when the COVID situation happened. I came back to San Francisco at the very beginning. So for the whole 2 years of time I was in San Francisco, I was so happy to be able to bring our project into the movements like the Black Lives Matter movement. And then later on, we have solidarity events, a whole series of them, and during the really difficult time for Asians in America, and there was so much violence against us, and so I see this as part of the series. Yes. So yeah, this is our current logo in English and Chinese, and yeah, and this is also such a great opportunity for me to be even able to join everybody from China. And I was one of the lucky ones who made it here during this almost impossible time. Yes. Go ahead, please, Michael.
So one of the things we do is we go into communities and we bring Chinese speaking citizens and African Americans together to exchange their work. We've done poetry and prose, but mostly we concentrate on poetry, and I edit the work, Chun translates the work, and we seek to publish it together. And often it's inspired by images, and we ask the people in the workshop to bring images with them. And we'll provide more information on that at the end of where you can find out more about it. But when we first started working together, we were looking for common themes, regardless of what community you're from. And family was a big one. And so I'm going to share one of the early works that Chun translated for me. And I'm going to say a little bit about this poem after you've heard it both in English and Chinese. But the poem is based on this image that you see, and also based on a story my mother told me. So Black Star, Gaynell Warr, 1932 to 2015. She called me Shinola, outside her name. Sorry, I already screwed up. Okay, this is Black Star. She got called Shinola, outside her name, as slight against her blackness, by lost souls caught inescapably in her dark attraction and blinded by her radiance in the sky.
黑明星作为对他的黑的蔑视，他被那些失落在他无法逃脱的黑色的吸引力中，和被他在天空中耀眼的光芒照瞎了眼睛的灵魂们，称呼为希努拉斜游。
So Chun and I both had these images of our beautiful mothers. And the story behind my poem is that when I first saw this image of my mother, which I didn't see until much later in life, it was only a few years before she passed away. And my first reaction to it is she looks like a movie star. And when I would share this image with other people, they would say the same thing. But yet my mother was scorned because of the color of her skin. So as beautiful as she was, people would really ridicule her because she was so Black. You can't really see how dark she is, but she was, darker than me. And this poem is short because I really want people to concentrate on the image. I try as much as possible to bring the two together. So thank you, Chun, for translating that piece for me. And if you could tell people about your poem and your mother.
Yes. Next slide, Michael. Yes. So this is my beautiful mother, who I am very proud of too. And she is the reason why I traveled back here. And she's not well. And yeah, I really tried so hard. It took me months to be able to get here. So I grew up during the Chinese Cultural Revolution, and we were very isolated from the rest of the world. And it's a very, difficult time for Chinese people. But, my mother is the sky for me. So here is Beauty Lu. People called Mama Beauty Lu. Her family name is Lu. Her face, a smooth oval shape. Her skin, a light olive color. Under her eyebrows, like willow leaves, her eyes were bright and clear as the blue sky above, where I never saw a trace of fear or doubt, where my childhood glimmered with a golden lining in the raging storm of a tragic revolution, which she withstood with her beauty and courage, my heaven on earth. 陆美人，人们称妈妈为陆美人，她姓陆，她有着椭圆形的面庞，浅橄榄色的皮肤，在她柳叶般的眉下，她的眼睛如蓝天般晴朗。在那里，我从未见过一丝恐惧与疑虑，在那里，我的童年发出金色的光芒。它以美与勇气抵挡着一场悲剧革命的风暴，赋予我人间乐土。Thank you.
Thank you, Chun. And so just at the early stages of the pandemic, Chun and I both received an invitation from the Chinese Cultural Center here in San Francisco. They were checking in with artists to see how were they dealing with the pandemic, how were they reacting to it, and they asked us to write something about it. And so I wrote this poem, and in addition to asking us to write, they asked us to produce a video. So this, the video that I videoed myself is on our website, Two Languages, One Community. And a lot during the pandemic, there were a lot of commissions to write things, and there's so many poems that I probably would never have written had I not been asked, but this is one that I had been thinking about just in reaction to the attacks against the Asian community, as Chun mentioned earlier. And so I'm going to share this poem to your assailant who attacks us all. Do you call yourself God-fearing, devoted to do harm to others? Does your God condone your violence, your ignorance, your corruption? Does your God hate your neighbor like you do? Does your God share your love for prophets bearing false witness, fueling your grievance fever? Do you swallow the lies they regurgitate? Do you really need a reason? Are you truly a true believer of both God and golden calf? Does the all-knowing know you? Do they love you as you are? Does it matter that they are watching your naked depravity? Do you pray before you pray on innocence in this guilty world? Do you have your God's blessing, or are you as godless as you seem? Did your father teach you to beat the mean and main? Is he proud of your cowardice? Does your mother say, well done, son? Did they train you in backwardness? Do you feel bigger in your smallness, content with acts of uselessness? Is your inner bullying seething still beneath your concealed surface? Are you comforted in your criminality, stupefied by superiority, simply insane or lost? Who are you?
Thank you, Michael. Could you move to the slide with the Chinese? Yeah, thank you. 致攻击你们的人，他们在攻击我们所有人。你自称敬畏上帝吗？你致力于己所不欲，勿施于人吗？你的上帝宽恕了你的暴力、你的无知、你的腐败吗？你的上帝像你这样仇恨你的邻居吗？你的上帝会认同你的带着假见证，让你的愤怒不平、不断发烧的所谓先知的爱吗？你吞下他们反复口吐的谎言吗？你真的需要理由吗？你是你的神和金牛犊真正的信徒吗？你那全知的神认识你吗？他们会爱这样的你吗？你在乎他们看着你赤裸的堕落吗？在袭猎这个有罪的世界上的无辜者时，你祈祷吗？你有上帝的祝福吗？还是像你看起来那样没有上帝？你的父亲教你去攻击、贬低和残害他人吗？他会为你的怯懦感到骄傲吗？你的母亲会说干得好，儿子吗？他们训练你倒退落后了吗？你卑鄙渺小时感到更强大吗？你满足于自己无意的行为吗？隐藏在你的表面下的恶霸还在沸腾吗？你在被优越性麻木了的犯罪中受到了安慰吗？是疯了还是迷路了？你是谁？
Thank you, Chun. Chun, I'm going to go back to the English so people can just look at it for a bit. But I was wondering if you wanted to say something about this particular poem and the translation before we move.
Yeah, this is a really, really timely poem. It happened, I mean, the violence against Asians happened pretty early during the pandemic, and I have just gotten back from China. And we just did an event with the Chinese Culture Center for our project. And then things happened. We both feel we have to do something. And hence there is this poem. And I translated so quickly. And we shared almost every time in our event. It's a very symbolic poem for our solidarity. Yeah.
Yeah, and Chun mentioned that, the kind of speed of going from, response to poem to translation. And I just wanted to mention that normally I take a really long time to write poems. I have one poem that it took 10 years to write. The Chinese Culture Center asked me for this poem, and I wrote it in 3 days, and I shot the video in a day. And that's just like, for me, if you know anything about the way I write, that's unheard of. But one of the things about the pandemic is that I have felt compelled, not just because of the pandemic, but also the police killings and the George Floyd movement, that I have to hold on to my stuff not as long as I typically do, because I want to get it out into the world. And that's what happened with this piece. Speaking of which, this is a poem based on the police killings that I referenced. It's this is, by the way, a beautiful rendering by one of our Chicago artists. Many of us know him as Design. He's graced the cover of the Guild calendar. Now he goes by his original name, Carlos Royon. But he allowed me to use this, and I'll say a little bit about where you can find that. This poem is a serial poem that I've been writing since at least 2018, adding the names of people who have been unjustly killed by the police. And it's called What Not to Do, an Unfinished Poem. And Chun also translated this into Chinese. We're not going to recite it in Chinese today, but we'll let you know where you can hear it in Chinese. So What Not to Do, an Unfinished Poem. Breathe, Eric Gardner Choke. Sell, Lucy's. Resist to death. Stand, Amadou Diallo in vestibule. Carry, wallet, look out of place, act suspicious, 41 fired, 19 bullets kill. Park, China Haggerty on side of road. Talk on cell on side of road. Shot on side of road. Drive, Philando Castile with broken brake lights. Carry, legal firearm. Announce you have a gun. Shout, not reaching for gun. Shot, 5 bullets, 2 to heart. Approach, Oscar Grant, the police. Beg, not to shoot. Kneel, shot anyway. In back. Carry, Tamir Rice, toy gun, shot with real bullets. Carry, Romaine Bisman, prescription bottle, shot, 2 bullets to torso. Not carry, Keith Lamont Scott, a gun when told to drop it, shot. B, Natasha McKinney, schizophrenic. B, superhuman, stunned while shackled, 50,000 votes to death. B, John Crawford, an imminent threat. Shop for Walmart air rifle. Carry Walmart air rifle. Talk on cell phone at Walmart. Shot with real bullets at Walmart. B, George Floyd, a suspect. B, a 6'7" Black man. B, claustrophobic, asphyxiated, knee on neck while handcuffed. Run, Stephen Clark through grandmother's yard. Carry, cell phone, shot, 20 bullets fired, 8 hit primarily in back. Jog, Almond Arbery, shot, 2 bullets kill while hunted. Sleep, Breonna Taylor in bed, shot, 8 bullets kill. Sleep, Rashard Brooks at Wendy's. Flee for daughter's birthday. Point, dead taser over shoulder, shot, 2 bullets in back. Walk, Elijah McClain, home. Look sketchy, play music, wear ski mask, shop for iced tea, carry iced tea, act crazy, whisper, can't breathe, beg to go home. Be superhuman, be anemic, be suspicious, be on something, be undetermined, choked to death, breathe. So we're not going to read that today, but you can find that poem at our recitations of both the English and Chinese on our website, 2languages1community.com. We've read these poems at many venues and institutions. And so if you go to the video section of our website, you'll find plenty examples of Chun reciting the poem in Chinese. But I did want to just show you can get that. And also, Chun, once I've shared this information, feel free if there's anything you want to say about your translation of this poem before we move on. But another of our Chicago friends, Dorian Harris, who is, the editor of Obsidian, she selected this poem to not only be published in Obsidian, but also I proposed a site, because what you heard is a small portion of the poem. Unfortunately, the version you've heard is actually shortened for, so when Chun and I recite it live, we don't always do the entire poem. Well, one, you can find the entire poem on Obsidian. It's been released not only in its latest edition, but also on its website. There's a permanent site with that image from design where the updates to this poem will can always be found, because I'm adding the names to it and I've only shared some of them tonight. It takes 10 minutes at least to read the entire poem. So you can find that at Obsidian at obsidianlit.org. Chun, did you have anything to add before we go to the next slide?
Yeah, this is again during written and translated during the same time. And again, as Michael said, we share this poem almost in every event we have been to. And it's also one of this, one is about solidarity against anti-Asian violence. One is the solidarity for the Black Lives Matter movement. Yes, so both happened during 1 year, right? The first 2020, right, Michael? You wrote this in the 20.
Well,
Yeah,
I
so
started in 2018, but yeah.
Yeah, but it's an ongoing poem, and you have a project for this, built around this poem, right?
Yes, as a matter of fact, that's going to be, and the Obsidian connection is rooted to that. It's connected to that project. So I'm just going to read. I'm just going to read one more poem that before Chun shares her work, and this is also translated, and I think Chun is going to share that. It's called "The City Speaks of This Moment." It's another commissioned poem. This poem was an installation that was a part of the San Francisco Urban Film Festival, and it was featured outside at the Yerba Buena Arts Center for 3 months during the pandemic. It's called "The City Speaks of This Moment." Tears roll down my streets and hills as they suffer from emptiness. Some life has returned, some life has disappeared, some life has returned. Coyotes feel safer in the suddenly borderless wilderness and roam through my urban forests. I watch the white crowned sparrows swell around now lifeless toll booths on a choir to Golden Gate. I hear them singing a new song. They hear each other sing above the din of silenced traffic. Tenths of disowned people come and go. Thousands invisible in plain sight. They don't care what that the cable cars have deserted me, that coffee shops have turned their tables upside down, that mask wearers are superheroes saving innocent lives, that 9/11 happens every day, that Black lives never mattered. They do not want things back the way they used to be. They have never been sheltered in time or place. They crave a new world, a caring, centered, healing world, plagued by infectious sanity. I see the signs on shuttered eateries, predicting that we will survive. Realists calculate not all of us. I hear them shouting on their soapbox from overpriced rooftops that some of us is better than none of us. I know from agonizing experience that we are lost without dreamers. I have burned down before, down to the edges of Van Ness Avenue. Faults have shaken and broken my body. Bridges cracked, towers toppled, chasms opened, hearts stopped. I have survived and recovered from overwhelming loss. I have rebuilt, although not for everyone. This time, it could be different. Thank you.
Yes, the Chinese version. 城市说起这一刻，眼泪沿着我遭受着空旷的街道和小山滚落。有些生命消失了，有些生命回来了。郊狼在突然无界的荒野里感到更安全，漫游穿过我的城市森林。我看着白冠的燕子绕着在一个更加安静的金门桥上，如今了无生气的收会亭涌动。我听见他们在唱一首新歌，他们听到彼此在静默下来的交通嘈杂声之上歌唱。被遗弃的人们的帐篷来了又去，成千上万的人在光天化日下被无视。他们不在乎电缆车抛弃了我，咖啡店已经把他们的桌子倒了过来。戴面具的人都是拯救无辜生命的超级英雄。911事件每天都在发生，黑人的生命从来都不重要。人们不想要一切回到 next slide please 过去的样子。他们在时间或地点中从未得到庇护，他们渴望一个新世界，一个充满关怀、神智健全、有治愈力的世界。被有传染力的理智 揪住。我看到了关闭的餐馆的牌子上写着我们会活下来的预言。现实主义者合计着，不是我们所有人。我听见他们在价格过高的屋顶大喊大叫，我们中的一些人总比没有人要好。我从痛苦的经历中知道，没有了梦想者们，我们是迷失的。我以前曾被烧毁，一直烧到 Van Ness 大道的边缘，断层动摇并摧毁了我的身体，桥梁开裂，塔楼倒塌，裂痕打开，心跳停止。我活了下来，从巨大的损失中恢复。我已经重建，虽然不是为所有人，这次可以有所不同。Thank you.
Thank you, Chun.
Okay, so I will begin to share my poetry from this point on. Thank you, Michael, for the wonderful reading. So as I mentioned before, I grew up during the Chinese Cultural Revolution. Actually, I was born at the very beginning of it. So this is my book, Little Green, published by Simon Schuster. And I just share the opening of this book in case you're interested in reading it. I was born in a small city near the East Sea when the Great Cultural Revolution began. My name is Xiaoqing, Little Green. My country, 中国, the Middle Kingdom. When I was 10 years old, our leader died and the revolution ended. And this is how I remember it. Thank you. And this is, in Michael and my poetry, we write so much about our family. So this is my father's calligraphy, says Little Green, which is my family name, nickname, and the title of the book, also the chop he designed for me. And then his calligraphy of our whole family tree. And so starting from great-grandmother, great-grandfather, all the way to me and my siblings. Next slide, please. Yes, so magically, that little girl who grew up without knowing anything about the foreign countries and American and China were at odds then. And so it's a miracle for me to eventually can come to the US and study science and then write poetry in the foreign language I adopted and also in my native language. And then one day have my poem published bilingually by the legendary Aryan Press of San Francisco, which is the only press still is a foundry and does letter pressing and also binding by hand. So all three in one, this is the only place in the United States who still does it. And so last year, they found me from the internet. They found my poetry published by the San Francisco Public Library's Poem of the Day series. It's called The Map. And it's both in English and Chinese. They offered to publish as a broadside for a single page broadside for the 2021 graduates in America and their parents and the teachers and all people who endured the pandemic. So Michael, if you can put the link of the Aryan Press there, it would be great. So and this is how the broadside looks. The inside is a single page with English and Chinese. And this is the first time in Aryan Press history they ever published Chinese. And this is the beautiful calligraphy by Ai Qing Zhou. So the wrap goes around the broadside. Next slide, please. So I wrote this poem for my parents because whenever I go somewhere, if I'm in China with them, whenever I go somewhere, my father always brings out a map, and he and my mother will hover over it and try to identify where I will be. Even I'm just meeting some friends for dinner right down the street, they still want to know exactly which spot on the little street I will be. So that image, it never left me, and I'm just so deeply moved by it. And so I wrote this poem for them. I did not know it's going to be shared by with the whole world. So the map. When I was born, your bosom was the map. I occupied all of it in your cradling arms. When I began to walk, your eyesight was a map. I learned my steps, toddling and waddling in your adoring gaze. When I started school, your mind became a map. I ventured out and back, morning and night, in your unceasing care. When I grew up and left home, from hometown to other towns, home country to other countries, your heart became the map. I searched far and wide, high and low, for my direction and a place in the world, in your loving thoughts. Each time I set out for a journey, you asked for my destination, studied an open map, and accurately located the point of my being. Then one day, you picked up a magnifying glass, eyes moving closer and closer, hands trembling more and more. Finally, at a loss, no longer seeing clearly the lines and the points on the map, you hold me in your heart. Growing older and older, you can now only walk in my eyesight, fumbling steps, every trip outside an adventure. From now on, I will walk by your side so you can lean on me when we are at a loss, not knowing where to go. Love is the map. Thank you. 地图。刚出生时，你的胸怀是一张地图，我是那地图的全部，在你的怀抱中。刚走路时，你的目光是一张地图，我在那地图中摇摇学步，在你的注视中。上学时，我走出了家门，你的脑海是一张地图，我在那地图中朝出暮归，在你的牵挂中。长大后，我离开了家，从故乡到外乡，从祖国到异国，你的心是一张地图，我在那地图中摸索方向，寻找位置，在你的想念中。Next slide, please. 每当我开始一个旅程，你总会打开一张地图，询问我的去处，实时准确地找到我的所在。后来，你拿起了放大镜，眼睛离地图越来越近，手抖得越来越厉害。终于茫然中，你已经看不清地图上的点与线，我在你的心里。渐行渐慢，有一天，你只能在我的目光里蹒跚。每一次出行都是一场冒险。从此，我将把你搀扶在我的臂弯。当我们茫然不知所向，爱是一张地图。Thank you, Michael. Yes. So the next poem I'm going to share is about this lighthouse at Point Bonita Marine Headlands. And you can see on the photo, there is a path leading to a tunnel. You see the white frame over there. And then if you go through the tunnel, you will see the lighthouse on the tip. And then San Francisco is on the other side of the bay. And next slide, please. Yeah, this is the lighthouse. And I had, this is one of my favorite places. And I had no idea the tunnel which lead to the lighthouse actually was built by Chinese railway builders. And after they finished building the railway, we all know the Chinese Exclusion Act. And they were really unwanted, and they worked very cheaply for a very dangerous job that nobody else wanted. Because if you go there, the rock is very loose. You can pick the rock from the large pieces of stones, and you can pick small rocks from it. And so it needs to be built by hand tools, and only the Chinese laborers were willing to do it. They did it in 6 weeks. And I learned this from a ranger I met, and he said it's not on record, but it's believed to be the truth. Next slide, please. So when I first came here as a scientist and a first generation immigrant, I had no idea of the Chinese immigration history. And it took me such a long time to gradually learn. And even for the railroad, I took Amtrak, travel from place to place. I did not realize the railroad beneath the train was built by the Chinese immigrants. And so 90% of the railroad workers were Chinese, and 20,000 Chinese workers, and 3,000 of them, estimate 3,000 of them died along the railway, were buried there. And it's not even on record by the railroad company. And so and also Chinese received 30 to 50% lower wages and had to pay for their own food. But nevertheless, they did build it, but they were not at the ceremony celebrating the completion or the connection of the railroad and the final part of it. They were dismissed. And it's really sad, because due to the Chinese Exclusion Act, and not only very few Chinese people could come to the United States, and all of those people decide to stay, they could not bring their family over. So wives and parents, grandparents, and children mostly were all left in China. And so when I learned that history, I come to the tip of the land. I understand how they feel. So next slide, please. So I wrote the lighthouse for them. An iron door opens to a dark tunnel through a giant rock, chiseled a long time ago by bare hands and hand tools, hands that came from across the ocean, hands that chiseled through the continent, hands that built the railroad Trans-America. A land these hands touched deeply, a land these hands died for, a land these hands survived, a land these hands grew to love and wanted to make home. The headland of the continent, America, a giant dark rock probing into the vast water, one side the raging ocean, the other side the calm bay. Entering the tunnel, the narrow path, my mind, engulfed by darkness and unknowing, floats in the suddenly edgeless universe. All senses seem lost, except one, that the world is split. One side, the homeland, one side, the land of home, until after arriving at the end of the tunnel, I see on the tip of the rock the end of the headland, bare in rain and the wind, fog and a cloud, sun and the moon, is a lighthouse standing above the raging Pacific, like a heart beating to shine for both shores. Thank you. Next slide, please. So I read the Chinese version. I hope the previous generations of Chinese immigrants, the amazing people who built the railway, they will still hear me. And so this is for you and for them as well. 灯塔，铁门打开，黑暗的隧道穿过很久以前以螺手和手把工具决通的巨石，来自大洋彼岸卓级横穿新大陆修成太平洋铁路的辛劳之手深深触摸过的大地，为之而死去的大地，幸存于斯的大地，已然爱上的大地，期望成为家园的大地的夹角。巨大黑暗的岩石美洲大地的夹角探入广阔的水域，一侧是汹涌的大海，一侧是平静的海湾。进入狭窄的隧道，脑海被黑暗与无名吞噬，突然漂浮于无边的宇宙。万感顿时唯存一念，世界是分裂的，一边是故乡，一边是家园。直到走出隧道的尽头，才豁然而见，夹角之端岩石之上，裸露在风和雨、雾和云、日和月中，是伫立于汹涌的太平洋之上的灯塔，像一颗星，为此岸和彼岸无尽的跳动、闪耀。Thank you. Next, coming back to the time I was growing up during the Chinese Cultural Revolution, and we actually learned Black history in school. And so I used my imagination. Of course, I never met a foreigner, let alone a Black kid, and in that time, but learn about their history here. And I particularly imagined how the little children were during the really slavery time, and so I couldn't believe that was happening, and it was not even that long ago. Next slide, please. So I just want to share with you some of the posters from that time in solidarity with the Black people's movement in the 60s and even 70s. So next slide, please. And partially I was brought up by my grandmother, and because my father was in the, they sent a lot of people to the re-education schools, and many of my generation's our parents, many of them were separated. My mother was teaching in the country middle school then, and she could not, handle, I have two other siblings, so she could not handle all of us alone. And so half of the time we were with my grandparents, and we grew cotton in our area, and we had a long history of weaving cotton threads and the cotton cloths. And next slide, please. And my dear grandmother made those little cotton shoes for me, which my brother and I are wearing. And we are holding Mao's little red book, but you can see the cotton shoes on the corner, and the sole of the shoes are many, many layers of cotton. You have to stitch them, and she stitched them with hundreds of stitches and to hold them together. It's a really tough job. In my memory, she's always making these little shoes for me. And I still have them here, actually, in China and in the US. So next slide, please. And this is my little sister, and these are the shoes my grandmother made. And for, these are more for summer and spring and autumn. And my little sister, she's kicking one of those shoes in the air, and she's an amazing painter. So this is her painting. And she grew up, she's a little thing then. So we both love cotton. We have great memories with it. So next slide, please. And then, I later on saw some of those photos of from the South and little black kids in the cotton fields. So everything one day just happened, and this poem just flew out of me in almost just 20 minutes. Next slide, please. So I give you this poem, Cotton. Cotton. All I could think of was little black hands picking snow white cotton. When I was a child, learning about your people's fate on the other side of the ocean. In a winter classroom with no heating, my country, red and deep in revolution, isolated from the world. I heard slavery a term ancient and distant, re-denounced in the land where I sat with frozen toes, trembling with indignation and a yearning for justice. The original Shan, the pure goodness at the heart of a child. Revolution or not, red, black, or other. I had never met a child of another color. All I could think of was little black faces smiling like blooming cotton flowers, bursting warmth in the summer harvest. All I could think of was little black hands giving warm white cotton away, little black hands snatched away from black hands of mama and grandma, little black hands forever lost in the vast world. Next slide, please. Little black hands forever reaching at a loss, little black hands forever wiping tears, clear and salty, just like my own, when I missed my mama, as I snuggled against my grandmother under an ancient oil lamp, her hands roughened from cotton picking for the ism and the revolution, which we must all love and give everything to, stitching and cushioning shoes night after night with the few handfuls of cotton rationed to us, and a long thread she spun with a wooden spindle, spinning since the beginning of time and memory to keep my feet warm. Little black hands, where was your cotton? Where was your thread? Where were your mama and grandma? I had never met a child of another color. When I learned your history as a child, all I could feel was your ocean of tears flooding into the yellow sea, rushing the shore 100 miles away. So this is the Chinese translation of the poem. I don't know if we have enough time to read this. What time is it now?
I would suggest that you not, only so that we have more time for conversation.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, we still have 20 minutes left for the conversation. Yeah, so that's a good idea. Yeah, I agree with you. So thank you so very much for listening in both English and Chinese.
Great. And Michael, can we lose the share screen so we can see both your lovely faces?
Yeah, can we just say, tell you a little bit about the last two slides though?
Okay.
Feel free to chime in, Chun. But this is our first publication. The whole idea behind the project is that we bring Chinese speakers and people from the Black community together. Often in San Francisco, for instance, the neighborhood that I grew up in, for the first, between the ages of 3 and 7, as a community where Blacks and Chinese live together as neighbors, but there's often conflict in that neighborhood. So we bring people together into a writing workshop, and we come out of it with a publication of their work in Chinese and English. So this is our first one, Catching Memory, and right now it's available online on our 2 languages, 1 community website, but it will also become a book. And just so I guess you'll be spared the last image. Oh, there it is. Okay, so this is again just the information of where you can get us. I'm going to put this in the chat so we can start our conversation. Thank you so much, and thank you, Chun. This has been wonderful.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay, then, Michael and Chun, thank you so much. Your presentation just kind of had so many colors in it. And, the idea that each of you was serving the other person's work, and were being served by the other person's work. And I'm interested to hear what that's been like for each of you. Just the process of being in collaboration with the other. And I do want to say something else. It sounds like the two of you really kind of clicked from the first moment of conversation, because it sounds like things took off almost immediately upon your meeting. So maybe if you could just each of you share something about that collaboration experience.
Well, I'll just start by saying that just like in Chicago, there's a community of poets. We very much have that here in San Francisco too. So when as I mentioned, we met at a reading that was organized by the late Jack Hirschman, who was one of the poet laureates of San Francisco. And that community in particular is one that's been around a long time. And there's a real sense of togetherness and family, and also very different types of writing, a community that has really internationalist roots and interests, very, very politically active. So I would just say that that's the environment we met in. And so when you meet in that kind of environment, there's already kind of a basis for potential collaboration. But I do think the fact that I said I always wanted to be translated into Chinese probably was a real kind of jumping off point. And the fact that Chun came up to me after the reading and introduced herself, there was that kind of immediate connection. And then you start sharing your poetry and you find the commonalities. And as I said, we started first by kind of looking at, well, what are some themes and topics that are relevant to both communities? And so I think it was a good beginning. And it was significant because we started these acts of solidarity and wanting to bring community together before this, Donald Trump contributed a great deal to this horrible situation of anti-Asian hate. But it was, the roots, of course, have always been there. It's not new, but it exploded. And because of this project, we were already addressing it. Chun?
Mm-hmm. Yes, we started in 2014, right? Mm-hmm. That's when we met in the series, and Michael read before me, and I, some weeks later I read in the same series, but we connected when I went to his reading, and he caught me in a really good, I mean, his timing is really good because before I was so busy, I only had time to translate my own work. But I also, at the time, I was more into bilingual poetry. I mostly, the Little Green was published in English only, and I wrote the whole book in verse in English, not in Chinese. So, but he came in a really, during a really good time. And we are both so interested in community work. So, and from working on our poems, translating his poetry, and I show him my drafts in English, we learned so much from each other about the culture we came from, because he and I grew up in drastically different environment, and for us to be able to connect through our own poetry and the communities are really amazing. As I said, is a miracle, I believe, for both of us. And we were ready when, the whole pandemic and then the Black Lives Matter movement happened, and then the anti-Asian violence happened. We were completely ready. And we already did events before that. We already did workshops with Oakland Asian Culture Museum, Oakland Asian Culture Center, and then Chinese Culture Center of San Francisco. And we were working with the Asian Art Museum and the Mechanic Institute Library, the San Francisco Public Library. We are both very deeply involved with. So it has been really great to be able to respond and contribute right there, right when everything happens. Yeah, so it's a community. I mean, it's still going on, and we also, one great thing that happened is also during this time, starting with San Francisco Public Library, who published my poem, The Map, in English and Chinese. And then Everyone Press saw that. They proposed to publish in both languages. And then many journals and actually accept our poetry in 2 languages. And Poetry Northwest is featuring our project with both our poems, with my translation. Also, we are collaborating with poets like Maxine Hong Kingston and Al Young, and who is represented by his son, Michael Young, and Alpha Weaver, Jenny Lim, and we are reaching out to Tango and more. Yeah, so it's expanding, and we welcome collaborations. And if you have,
And I just wanted to pick up on just use one example when you talked about the process. Often when I read the poem, Black Star, that when Chun started translating that, even though it's a very short poem, there's a lot of depth and time that goes into the translation process, but also our discussion of not just the words, but the meaning of the poem. And just a kind of a funny example of what can happen in the process is the word Shinola is a word that's very much understood in America. But in this case, particularly among Black Americans, it can be used as a nasty word. So people used to say, my mother, they would call her Shinola because she was so Black. And in China, when Chun started translating this, she realized that this is a word for a luxury item in China, and that people wouldn't have the same reaction. And I didn't even know that. I looked it up after she told me that, and found out that Shinola is the same company, and they started a luxury watch company. So you're learning something out of the process as well. And then of course, then Chun has to make a decision, and we have to discuss, well, how's that going to appear in the translation? So Chun, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, because if you say Shinola, you just translate it by pronunciation in China. China, I wouldn't understand what it means, because certainly I didn't grow up using it. And now the company has become another kind of company. So I have to add the shoe shine part in, so people will get it right away. Shoe polish, they will know it's black, right? So that's a discussion I actually did. It took hours to find out what's happening there. So it's not, it's such a short poem, and for translation, because also Chinese and English are such dramatically different languages. And I normally don't translate a lot of other people's poetry. I'm very careful because I want to do justice to the original poem, and I often don't. I never ask other people to translate my own poetry from one language to the other. I handle all by myself because I know all of the details and nuances, right? So when I work with Michael, and when I show him my poems, and like the Beauty Lu, right? The last sentence is, my mother is she gave me haven on earth, right? So, but there is also heaven. One letter different. So I was debating, and both could work. And then I made my own choices. Then I showed it to Michael. I said, hey, what's your pick? I just want to see if you picked the same thing. And then we did. And so that's a really fun process. And I do this. Michael is a very important person for me to go to. And I have a couple of other people who I really connect and trust through poetry. I also work, I show them, my English drafts. Yeah, so it's a really amazing process.
So, Al, are you seeing questions from people in YouTube, on YouTube, or do you have any questions you want to ask them?
There really aren't any questions on YouTube. There's a lot of accolades, so a lot of thank yous. So if Michael and Chun are not looking at YouTube, just be aware that people have really enjoyed your reading tonight.
Oh, do you want to share a couple of tidbits?
Well, I can read, things like, we really enjoyed your work.
Let's have more discussion.
Okay, okay, never mind.
Let's just go back to talking.
Come on, we're just overwhelmed with accolades. Come on, no more.
Yeah, too many. Yeah. Well, okay, so here is, this question might take up the rest of our time together. I'm not going to ask that one. Just tell us a little bit about your where to from here, particularly in terms of these community workshops you're looking to develop.
We will certainly continue this work. We keep on being invited by people like you to do events with them. So we are in very close connection to the Chinese Cultural Center of San Francisco, Asian Art Museum, and Oakland Cultural Center, organizations like that. We are constantly planning to do new events and also workshops for different. Also, our previous workshop is for. At the beginning, we planned it for senior citizens, but we end up having a group of people in the middle, and we were lucky enough to have many community leaders and amazing writers from both communities join us. But in the future, Asian Art Museum would do workshops for the teachers for their summer institute, and so we are very interested in connecting to schools and to youth and even younger age school children. And yeah, so we are open to all age groups and all communities. It's not just our two communities. We are open to connect with all communities. We welcome people from all walks of life and communities to join us. Otherwise, yeah.
Can I just give one other example? There's, is that someone's reached out to or expressed interest in utilizing the project in the in some housing projects where there is conflict, and even if there's not conflict, sometimes it's just a lack of connection. I mean, you don't have to have conflict to have a lack of connection, where there is sometimes a misunderstanding of the cultures or a total lack of understanding of the cultures. And so this, by bringing people in to tell their stories, and that's really important, that it's not only writing is a way of telling stories. So people have an opportunity to tell their stories by giving them the opportunity to respond to images of their own that they bring in. It's a very, very organic process, and it has a lot of potential.
Yeah. And then for myself, since I just won the Sankofa funds for cultural heritage, so I am also focusing on Chinese American stories, and we won it with a project called Papers and Soldiers. It's my collaborators' father and uncle both came through Angel Island as paper sons, but they both become soldiers in World War II and fought for the US. And the one was in the Flying Tigers, the other was in Europe. The father lived to 105. He passed away when I was on my way to the airport coming back to China. He literally passed away peacefully at that time, 105. The uncle is 100 years old. He's still fully alive. We interviewed him right before I left. He's soldiers. Soldiers. I mean, as paper sons, but fought for the country. When they are family, their mother, grandmother, and the wife and the children were left in China, forbidden to come. They were not protected during World War II, when their son and husband and brother are fighting in the war for the very country who rejected their family. So it's really ironic. It's a tough history, but I really want to be able to present these stories. So we're doing this big project called Chinese American Stories, and we are establishing a big website. So anybody who wants to share their stories, Chinese American stories, can be presented by us. Yeah.
Well, I'm really struck by, in the whole of this evening, by the stories that both of you have shared, but also the stories and the long history that tie us together. Side agenda there being, this community of writers that is tuned in both on YouTube and here in Zoom. And I just want to thank you for sharing your collaboration, Chun and Michael. So good to see you and hear you, all of the readers in the open mic, and Al and Bill. And anything before we sign off, Al?
Well, nothing to add to that. We're right up to our time, and I just want to thank all the open micers. Great job, and our features, Michael and Chun. It was a beautiful reading that you did together. And
can I just make an announcement? I got to do that.
Sure.
Yeah, please. I'd love to see you on March 15th in Chicago at the American Writers Conference. I'll be appearing there with Quincy Troop for his new book, Duente. And I hope you can make it and spread the word.
Did you say March or May?
May, right?
Sorry, May 15th.
Yes, I will definitely be there. So
Yeah.
We'll see you there.
All right, thank you.
See you all next month, I hope. And you guys be well.